I have done a lot of night driving in my life. Not for work or anything, just because my old friend group and I would always stay out until crazy hours when we were in our late teens and early 20s. I guess you could say we were the losers, thinking it was cool to hang out in parks or parking lots until 5 in the morning every weekend. Looking back now, I see it was a stupid waste of time. But because of those habits, I have spent many nights driving on empty roads, and those are the hours when the drunks, the restless, and the crazy people come out.
One weekend night. It must have been approaching 4 a.m. I was beyond tired. All I wanted was to go home. I had just dropped off one of my friends from the park where we had been hanging out, but before heading to my house, I needed to stop for gas. I used to enjoy fueling up at night because there would never be other cars blocking the way. Everything was usually quiet, eerie, but calm. I pulled into one of my usual gas stations, not far from my parents' house. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly in the stillness. As I walked toward the building to pay, a short man wearing a hood approached from the opposite side. He stopped abruptly, dead in his tracks, and just stared at me. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a split second, it felt like time had frozen. My pulse quickened, but I tried to hide my nerves. "What?" I muttered, not breaking my stride. No response. He just stood there, watching, silent. I forced myself to keep moving. Probably just a crackhead, I told myself. Inside, I paid the attendant for my gas and even bought a lottery ticket, trying to make everything feel normal. But when I stepped back outside, the air felt heavier, as if the shadows had thickened. I looked around, not a single car, not a single soul, just a ghost town under the cold glow of the lights. I filled my tank quickly, trying not to glance over my shoulder too often. Once I was done, I got back into the car and started the drive home. That's when I heard it. A faint sound, soft but distinct, coming from behind me. My stomach turned to ice. Slowly, carefully, I lifted my eyes to the rearview mirror. Someone was there. A figure sat in my back seat, crouched low but unmistakably there. And then I saw his eyes, wide, unblinking, staring right into mine. I let out a scream so loud it tore through my chest. My hands jerked the steering wheel. The car swerved violently as I slammed on the brakes. "Get out!" I shouted, my voice cracking with sheer panic. My door flew open, and I stumbled out, still screaming help at the top of my lungs. The figure moved. It was him, the hooded man from the gas station. He slid out of the back seat like a shadow and hissed in a low, chilling voice, "I could have slit your throat." Porch lights flicked on along the street. Doors opened. Neighbors stepped out, their silhouettes forming against the glow of their houses. The man bolted down the road, disappearing into the night. I didn't chase him. I couldn't. My legs felt like stone. A couple of neighbors hurried over, their faces pale and wide-eyed, asking if I was all right. My voice trembled as I told them what had happened, how a stranger had been hiding in my car. But by then, he was long gone. I thanked the people who had come to my aid, climbed back into my car, and finished the drive home, eyes flicking to the mirrors every few seconds, my heart still hammering. That night remains the most terrifying experience of my life.
The second story took place in the mid-1960s in the Atlanta area when I was about 8 or 9 years old. My father was a school teacher in a suburb some distance from our home, and since I attended the same school, I rode with him every day. It meant we had to get up very early, well before sunrise, to make the long drive. Several mornings a week, we would stop for gas at a small independent station. We were often the first customers there, arriving shortly after the station opened. Back then, everything was full service. An attendant would come out to fill the tank, clean the windshield, and handle the money. They usually carried a roll of bills and a coin dispenser on their belt. Behind the pumps, there were 2 tiny bathrooms, one for men and one for women. I often used the men's room when we stopped, as the drive could feel endless to a child. One dark morning, we arrived as usual, only to find the station deserted. No lights, no movement, no attendant in the booth. The only sound was the occasional rush of cars passing by on the highway. My father honked the horn once, then again, nothing. He speculated that maybe the attendant was in the bathroom, but minutes passed with no sign of him. Maybe he had car trouble, my father suggested, or simply hadn't made it to work yet. I felt the urge to use the bathroom and reached for the car door, but my father stopped me. "We'll go to the next station," he said. "This one's not open yet." With that, we pulled away, still puzzled. 2 days later, my father was reading the local newspaper when he suddenly exclaimed loudly. I rushed over and he told my mother and me about a small article he had just read. The gas station attendant from our usual stop had been found murdered, stabbed multiple times, and his body had been stuffed inside the men's bathroom. The motive appeared to be robbery. The killer had taken all the cash and coins, though the amount wasn't specified. I froze. The thought hit me like ice. If my father had let me go to that bathroom, I might have been the one to find the body, or worse, encountered the killer before he left. We never went back to that station again.
I stumbled upon the weathered sign of an old gas station, its flickering lights serving as a beacon of solitude amidst the darkness of the night. The neon letters struggled to stay alive, buzzing faintly in the oppressive silence. I had been driving for hours through desolate back roads, chasing a destination that now seemed like an illusion. The fuel gauge dipped dangerously close to empty, forcing me to stop. As I parked, an odd sensation crept up my spine. The night air felt heavy, like it carried secrets no one should know. Something about the place was wrong, so wrong that even the crickets had fallen silent. My instinct screamed at me to turn around, but curiosity, stubborn and reckless, pushed me forward. The door creaked open as I stepped inside, releasing a gust of cold air that smelled faintly of rust and decay. The dim interior stretched before me like a forgotten relic, its shelves cluttered with dusty items no one had touched in decades. Faded candy wrappers, expired canned goods. A single, flickering bulb hung above the counter, casting long, jagged shadows that seemed to move when I wasn't looking. Then I saw him. A frail figure stood behind the counter, hunched over like a dying tree. His skin clung to his bones, pale and papery, his sunken eyes gleaming in the half-light. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, in a voice dry as ash, he beckoned me closer. "You've come a long way," he rasped, his lips curling into something that might have been a smile or a warning. "Not many stop here anymore." His voice had a strange pull, and before I realized it, I was standing at the counter, staring into those hollow eyes. And that was when he began to speak. He told me stories. Not ordinary stories, but dark, twisted tales that seemed to seep from the walls themselves. The first was about a traveler, someone like me, who had stopped here long ago. According to the old man, as the traveler fueled his car, a figure emerged from the woods. Cloaked in black, its eyes burned like embers, smoldering with otherworldly fire. The creature touched the traveler once, and in that single moment stole his soul. His body became nothing but an empty shell, doomed to wander in silence, forever yearning for what had been taken.
I shivered, trying to laugh it off, but the attendant's expression didn't change. He leaned closer, his voice sinking into a whisper, and told me another story, this one about a cursed gas pump. He said that whoever dared to use it would be plagued by visions of the damned. Their sanity would unravel, shredded by glimpses of a hell they couldn't escape. He described people clawing at their own eyes, trying to scrape away what they had seen, their screams echoing into the endless night. I wanted to leave then. Every fiber of my being screamed for me to run, but my legs refused to move. The stories kept coming, each one more grotesque than the last. Vanishing attendants swallowed by darkness. Customers who stepped into the restroom only to return as hollow-eyed phantoms. He said this place was different, thin, he called it. The barrier between worlds worn away until nightmares could slip through. When he finally stopped speaking, the silence was deafening. His eyes glimmered, not with amusement, but with fear. Fear and something else. Desperation. I'm telling you this because someone has to know. Someone has to see. I didn't answer. I turned and walked out, the night swallowing me whole. But the stories clung to me like smoke. The shadows seemed longer now, sharper, alive. My car's engine roared to life, but the unease remained, coiling tighter with every mile. What if the stories weren't just tales? What if something truly lingered back there, behind that cracked sign and shattered windows? The thought gnawed at me as the road stretched endlessly ahead. My headlights carved tunnels through the dark, but the blackness beyond felt alive, pressing in, whispering. And then it hit me, a realization that turned my blood cold. What if the gas station wasn't just a haunted place? What if it was a doorway? The stories were an entertainment. They were warnings. That man hadn't been talking to me to scare me. He was trying to make me understand. The station was a portal, a wound between worlds, bleeding darkness into ours. I should have kept driving. God, I should have. But something pulled at me, a force stronger than fear, stronger than reason. Curiosity. Or maybe it wasn't curiosity at all. Maybe it was the station calling me back. I turned around. The road twisted like a serpent, the shadows thickening until they felt almost solid. When I reached the station, it looked different, darker, heavier, like it had been waiting. The air crackled with something wrong, something ancient. I stepped inside, and the old man was there, his eyes hollow yet burning with grim purpose.
"This place," he whispered, "was never just a station. It was built on sacred ground, a crossing point. We kept it sealed until the seals broke." The air grew colder. Shadows writhed like living things, slithering along the walls. The old man began to chant, his voice trembling as he traced the symbols with shaking hands. The ground vibrated under my feet, and from the center of the room, something began to form, a rippling void, blacker than night, sucking the light from the air. A portal. The whispers grew louder, curling around my thoughts like smoke. They promised power, knowledge. They promised things I didn't dare name. And then came the shapes, twisted silhouettes writhing within the darkness, clawing at the edges, eager to spill through. "Help me," the old man croaked, his eyes locked on mine, pleading. "Help me close it before it's too late." Fear clawed at my throat, but something else burned inside me, a spark of defiance. Together, we dragged the heavy altar across the floor, sealing the runes one by one. The chanting grew frantic, echoing through the room as the shadows screamed. I grabbed the old books, their pages crawling with symbols that made my vision swim, and read the words that tasted like ash on my tongue. The void convulsed. A sound like tearing flesh filled the air. One final surge of blackness, and then silence. When the smoke cleared, the portal was gone. The room lay in ruins, the candles snuffed out, the symbols cracked and broken. The old man collapsed, his body crumpling like paper. He looked at me one last time, a faint smile ghosting across his lips. "It's done," he whispered. Then he was still. I stumbled outside, the cold night air hitting me like a wave. The gas station stood silent, its lights dead, its windows black. It was over. At least that's what I told myself. As I drove away, the horizon bleeding pale light, the weight of what happened clung to me like a second skin. I had stared into the abyss, and it had stared back. But the question lingered like poison. Did we really seal it? Or did we just wake it up? I don't know. All I know is this. Sometimes the darkest places in the world aren't abandoned. They're waiting.
This took place when I was 25. I was driving from North to South Texas, and due to my work schedule, I could only do this late at night. I was on Route 281 for much of the drive, and at these late hours, it was an easy, straight drive. I just had to keep myself awake. I was already kind of shot from work, and then getting on the road right after it was brutal. I had to keep making stops for coffee at random gas stations just to keep myself going. I think it was my third time starting to feel a little sleepy, and on top of that, I needed to fill up my tank as well. I pulled into the first gas station I could find on the desolate side roads. I can't remember what kind of gas station it was, maybe a Sunoco or a Shell. There was one other car in the parking lot. I parked next to one of the pumps and went inside. There were two people in the shop, the cashier and another guy pacing down the aisles. I went to the coffee maker and poured myself a cup. The guy who was pacing around came up to me and said, "Careful, it's hot." And then he left. It was a piss-poor, creepy, unnecessary attempt at starting a conversation that I didn't bite at. I was not in the mood. I didn't reply and took the coffee to the cashier where I paid for it as well as for the gas. The guy came up behind me while I was paying and said, "I really like that top." I said, "Thank you," just loud enough for him to hear. He followed it up with, "Where are you heading off to so late at night?" I was so annoyed by this point that I firmly asked him to leave me alone. The cashier was some 40-something-year-old Hispanic man. I wasn't sure how much English he understood, or if he was even reading the situation that was happening in front of him. But he was also a smaller, shorter man, and it was doubtful he was going to step in at all. The man behind me said, "Calm down," after I asked him to leave me alone. I left the shop without saying another word and went to my car. I heard the door open again a few seconds after I left the shop. I was next to my car now, preparing to fill up the tank. As gas started pumping into my car, I heard his footsteps on the concrete over on the other side of the pumps. Then they stopped.
The footsteps stopped. I glanced over and noticed him creepily standing on the other side of the pump I was using. He was quite literally just standing there, watching me. He wasn't filling up gas. There wasn't even a car there. I started considering grabbing my pepper spray from my center console. The guy said, "Are you alone?" When he asked that, the gravity of the situation escalated greatly. I replied, "No, my boyfriend is in the car." I opened the door and quickly grabbed the pepper spray from the center console. I held it at my side, pretending to still be focused on pumping the gas. The man was inching his way around the gas pump, like he was coming around to my side. He said, "I don't see anyone in the car." I pulled out the pepper spray and aimed it up at the man. He laughed and backed away, saying he was just trying to make conversation. He was walking backwards, his focus still locked onto me. Just about done pumping gas, I felt and heard a clang. The gas stopped pumping. My tank was full. I had like $6 worth of change I had to go back inside to get. The man was in between the shop and me. I had to make a choice. I decided to get my change. I kept my arm up in the air, pointing the pepper spray can at him. He continued to back away, chuckling. When it was safe, I turned my back to him and entered the shop, asking the cashier for change. I told the cashier that the man was making me really uncomfortable, but it seemed like he didn't really understand what I was saying. Once I got my change, I looked out the glass door into the parking lot before leaving. I didn't see that man out there. I was scared to go out. What if he was hiding somewhere?
I stepped outside in front of the shop. I didn't leave that little sidewalk. I just stayed there looking around. That man was gone out of sight, which meant he was absolutely hiding. Eventually, a pickup truck pulled into the parking lot and parked next to one of the pumps. A large man with a beard stepped out, and I went over to him asking for help. I asked him to check if there was a man hiding behind my car. He was confused, but did it for me. When he got to the other side of my car, he yelled, "What are you doing?" And there went that creepy man hurrying away from behind my car.
He started to run away into the darkness surrounding the gas station. The bearded man said in his thick southern accent, "Be careful out there." I left that parking lot in a hurry and continued the rest of my drive. That creepy man was 100% waiting to pounce as soon as I unlocked my car doors, and that's really disturbing to me.